won the NASCAR Nationwide Series race Saturday in Nashville. Highlights and interview, plus who've been the top headline makers in the Sprint Cup season so far, and predictions of highlights to be made in the season to come. All next on NASCAR Now.
There's nobody sitting down at Daytona.
Joey Logano slamming the inside retaining wall.
Brian Vickers is collecting the front half of the field.
Oh, ran over the air hose.
You can hammer all you want to, but I'm going to beat you.
1 second, bring it home, bud.
We're done.
Say goodnight, Gracie.
The drag race to the checkered flag will be won by Kurt Busch. He'd like to wrestle away the second position off turn 2. Kyle Busch is going to survive the green-white checkered finish.
Turned around in Scott Speed. Kyle Busch got into it. He is free and clear, and he's headed for home. Jimmy Johnson off turn 4.
Within 5 car lengths, there are 3 cars racing for the lead.
Pop the champagne, Jeff Gordon. The losing drought is over. Gordon wins for the first time at Texas Motor Speedway.
From the Home Depot Garage Studio, welcome to the Monday Roundtable edition of NASCAR Now. No more Easter eggs, please. We take advantage of the traditional Easter weekend break for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series to have another one of our Reporter Roundtable shows. We welcome 3 gentlemen who cover the sport regularly to have what will be a very wide-ranging conversation on a lot of issues in the sport these days. Pleasure to welcome to the program Jeff Gluck, the Associate Editor of NASCAR Scene Magazine, Jim Pedley, the Managing Editor of RacingToday.com, and our NASCAR Now lead reporter, Marty Smith. Your preference, please, from Sunday, the marshmallow peeps or the chocolate eggs?
You got to go chocolate, right? I mean, seriously, there's no contest there.
I'm a malted milk egg guy.
Oh, there you go.
Peeps, instant sugar buzz, man.
Yeah, last for 2 years. All right, there was one major NASCAR race on the weekend. It was the Nationwide Series at Nashville for a 300-miler. Highlights now. Carl Edwards on the pole, leading off what would basically be a 3-man race. Edwards, Joey Logano in the 20, and Kyle Busch in the 18. They basically led the race under green all day. Turning point of the race, a green flag pit stop for Edwards. When he went from 3rd to 1st on the stop, but that was because he left without all the lug nuts tight on the left front tire. That necessitated a stop on a caution just 10 laps later that dropped Edwards from the lead to 22nd. He was the only guy to pit at that time. That's not good. Busch and Logano traded the lead several times during the ensuing 100 laps. Busch is leading with 15 to go when caution waved for a Michael Waltrip spin. The restart came with 11 to go, and boy, things got interesting. Turn 3, Logano goes past Busch for the lead. Then coming off turn 4, Joe Nemechek goes upside down at Nashville. He and Ricky Stenhouse got together. Now check this out. Nemechek drove it away, wanted to continue in the race, but for safety reasons, NASCAR made him take it behind the wall. Restart came with 5 to go. Logano got away from Busch and took the checkered flag. His 2nd Nationwide Series win in just his 24th start. Joey Logano, your NASCAR Nationwide Series winner at Nashville this weekend. Championship standings, Kyle Busch finished 2nd, shaving another 15 points off Carl Edwards' lead. Edwards came back to finish 5th, by the way. 23 points between the two heading to Phoenix, where each has 2 victories, and they split, Edwards and Busch did, last year's 2 Nationwide Series races. Some thoughts on Saturday's race? What did you think?
It's just huge for Joey Logano and the entire Gibbs bunch. I mean, this kid, the pressure he's had, all the questions about whether or not he belonged in the 20, this is huge for him. It just reminds him that he can still drive a race car.
Yeah, how can you not feel good about Joey Logano winning one? The pressure, he's a teenager, and you just got to feel real good for him.
I mean, the thing is, we know that Kyle and Carl are going to battle all year, but what I like is that a guy other than them, or a Cup regular. Now, he's a Cup regular for sure, but by nationwide experience, Joey Logano is certainly a nationwide guy, and he's somebody different that we're not used to seeing all the time.
And beat Kyle Busch in the same piece.
Right, and that's huge.
He knew every adjustment that Kyle Busch made. Jason Ratcliffe and Dave Rogers talked on the radio during the race. We did this. What did you do? And he went out and beat him. His car was better on the short run now, but it was an impressive performance by Joey Logano.
Quick agree or disagree, the championship between Kyle Busch and Carl Edwards may be decided on which which team makes the fewer mistakes on pit road.
Yeah, I think that's true, but I think overall the fewer mistakes in general. I mean, the fewer racing mistakes. We saw Kyle Busch wreck himself at Las Vegas, for instance. So overall, the fewest racing mistakes, but pit road for sure, yeah.
It does seem like pit road problems are cropping up more and more. They're playing a bigger hand than ever in the racing. That's where it's going to be decided.
Track position's so crucial now. It's everything with the way that the aerodynamics work on these race cars. Absolutely, pit road's crucial.
Carl went from 1st to 22nd, took him all race to get back to 5th, and he couldn't get any farther ahead than that. So we'll see how the pit road plays out for a while. All right, let's turn our attention to the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series now. 7 races in the traditional Easter weekend break. Why don't we look at some of the top stories of the season so far? We polled our reporters in advance of the show and kind of came to a consensus of what their biggest stories were. Item number 1 we're going to talk about is Roush Fenway Racing so far this year. It's been not what we were expecting.
No, and the thing about Roush Fenway this year is, I mean, we thought David Reagan was going to come out and do a lot, and he's 27th in points or whatever he is. McMurray has not done much. Kenseth won the first 2 races, but since then, you know, not a whole lot. Edwards is 8th, but we thought he was going to be a championship contender, so we thought even he would be a little bit better. So Roush Fenway, to me, is a little bit behind where we thought they would be just based on expectations and how they ended last year.
It's a matter of degrees, kind of. I mean, they're not like stinking the track up.
Yep.
Carl's up there, Biffle's doing well from time to time. They're not stinking the place up, but they're just not as good as you expect a Roush team to be.
Carl Edwards will be there. He'll be there once they get the pit crew figured out. You can't forget, we'd probably be talking about him winning Texas if he didn't have that issue on pit road late in the race. So I think the 99's very good, but the 26 is out to lunch, and the 6, it surprises me now. His stats aren't that different. He's worse in the points than he was last year, but at this point last year, he only had 1 top 10. He has 1 top 10 now, but he's only led 1 lap all season. So they definitely need to pick it up, 6 car.
Next top storyline of the season so far, in our opinions, Clint Bowyer and the surprising start he's had. You've been pretty up on that, Marty.
Extremely impressed with him, and he actually told me, I went to RCR a couple weeks ago and talked to Clint about this, and he said, I have gone from a top 10 driver to a top 5 driver, and I feel like a threat. He said he hadn't felt like a threat in a long time, and I really feel like the 33 is the most impressive story of the early season so far.
Yeah, talk about instant chemistry.
Yeah.
I mean, boy, they just come right out of the box hotter than they were last year. It's a great chemistry story.
Yeah, I mean, before the season, I could not have been more down on that team and down on Bowyer, because I thought I didn't even think they would finish in the top 20 in points going to a brand new team like that. And to be honest, I just doubted Bowyer's ability in general. And what he's done so far this year has shocked me and proved me wrong, but good for him. I mean, it's great.
Now, story of the season so far that turned up on everybody's lists when they sent them to us, Dale Earnhardt Jr.
Yeah, Dale Earnhardt Jr., what can you say? I mean, everybody thought this was going to be his year. Everybody. He said so himself at the media tour this year in Charlotte. He was talking about how he thought this was his year. The pressure's off. The spotlight's dimmer. Not there.
He's struggling a little bit, too. I mean, you know, we incessantly ask him questions. What's wrong with your race team? Are you and Tony Jr. going to break up? When is this going to happen? Well, I think that will come down to being his decision. The moment he decides, okay, we have to go our separate ways, that's when it's going to happen. A lot of people feel like that's what it's going to take for him to excel.
Mm-hmm. But see, here's my thing, Marty. I mean, they have a lot of expectations on them, and they should have a lot of expectations on them. I mean, he's the most popular driver, they have the most attention, and they're with the best race organization in the sport. They should be performing at a very high level. He's won 6 races in a season before. He can do it. You know, it's just a matter of where is it? Where is what we thought they would be when they went to Hendrick Motorsport?
But the expectations are warranted. He has the best equipment, the most money. You know, the 2 teammates that are winning every weekend.
Exactly, yeah, I totally agree, yeah.
He knows full well it's time to get it done.
And they need to.
Next topic, the economy. Surprise, didn't think that would come up, did you? And race teams that are failing and aren't going to be around anymore. It's been one of the main headlines.
Yeah, I mean, and we thought it would be a lot about short fields, and that really hasn't happened because there's been teams that have come and maybe they're starting parks, maybe they're not, but there have been enough cars. The attendance has been down, so that's a concern for sure. But the teams that are disappearing, you know, the 8 car not going to be around anymore starting this week. I mean, it's, you know, how long is it going to go on like this? And when we get to next year, are there going to be enough sponsors to support the series, you know, with the other contracts that are coming up?
Yeah, you know, Jeff, it's bad, but I don't think it's as bad as I thought it was going to be. Like, you lose the 8 car this week, but the 44 car picks up sponsorship. There's it's just not as bad as I thought it was going to. It's not the gloom and doom I think people were forecasting.
The critical thing is the manufacturers, I think, right now, Chevy and Dodge, whether or not they can stay around, whether or not they can show the U.S. government that they do get ROI and that it is a viable marketing platform for them. They swear by it. They say we sell cars because of NASCAR, and that's going to have to, they're going to have to convince people of that. So it'll be interesting to see what becomes of NASCAR if indeed they have to bow out.
And you mentioned car counts. We've had more cars in the Nationwide Series as well than I think any of us expected through the early part of the season. So despite the difficult economy, people are seeing opportunity to try and come to the racetrack and start something up. The #1 story on everybody's list when we sent it to them, as far as on the racetrack, had to do with Jeff Gordon. The 4-time champion has had a terrific start to 2009, I think better than any of us expected.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a couple months ago we were pronouncing him dead. He was too soft. He didn't care anymore. He didn't, he was too into his family and things like that. I think he showed that there's a little bit of life left in him.
And maybe that shows how close things really are, because if they were off by just a little bit last year, and they didn't have the season they wanted, maybe they've made 1 or 2 small adjustments. I mean, they obviously worked very hard, but to get those adjustments, now they're at the top of their game. Now he's back, and now he's like, oh yeah, that's just Jeff Gordon we remember.
There are 3 very important variables into Jeff Gordon's resurgence. First of all, work-life balance. He's learned to balance his new family and his racing career. Second, the no testing policy. I truly believe that the no testing policy is critical for Jeff Gordon because he has all that experience on those racetracks. He knows every nook, cranny, fissure, bump on every track. I spoke with Steve Letarte about that at Atlanta Motor Speedway last month, and he told me I can't even measure it. What a huge advantage that is for me that Jeff Gordon has that experience. So those 2 variables are just gargantuan. I mean, I am so impressed with what he's done because, as Jim said, a lot of us wondered, has it passed him by?
But I would caution us because sometimes early in the season we get ahead of ourselves a little bit. Sometimes we want to, Carl Edwards last year got out to such a hot start. It seemed like he was going to win every race. And of course, he was a championship contender by the end of the year. But the thing is, other teams will catch up to Jeff Gordon and that 24 team. So while he's hot right now, one or two other teams is just a little bit of adjustment away from also making that big kind of run.
Kyle Busch, consummate example. Yeah. Consummate example. Won 8 races the first 26, and then the wheels fell off. But I just see such a different fire in Jeff Gordon. He carries himself differently. He approaches things differently. It's great to see Jeff Gordon being back.
Marty, I'll throw another factor at you too. Last year, early in the season, he was talking about bump stops. He could not figure the bump stops out. This year, if he hasn't got them figured out, he's doing something. Because they look pretty tough.
Got us fooled.
Man, I'm happiest for in the whole thing is Steve Letarte. Talk about lifting some pressure off somebody's shoulders, and well-deserved. Jeff Gordon does lead the NASCAR Sprint Cup Championship standings, heading to this weekend's race in Phoenix, up a pretty sizable 162 over second-place driver Jimmie Johnson. By the way, 7 of those top 12 have won a Cup race at Phoenix before. Coming up on NASCAR Now, we saw the highlights of Joey Logano's spring break. Later in the show, Logano joins us to talk about his Music City masterpiece. That's close to the bottom of the hour. To change or not to change, we'll get the opinions of our panel on several issues of recent headlines and whether they would make changes or not if in charge for a day. And tomorrow's headlines today, predictions on what some of the headlines may be later in this season on NASCAR Now's Monday Roundtable.
NASCAR Now, brought to you by the Ridgeline from Honda. Strength meets intelligence.
Riders should be more responsible than that, because no matter what, you can't focus on what you're doing. You've got to sit down and address those rumors, and while you're addressing those rumors, you're not addressing making your car go faster or making your driving better. So I hate when things like that happen. Feel bad for Joey Logano.
You've been involved in some of those before, where you have to sit there and read the rumors about what you are or are not supposed to be doing?
Yeah, it is, and it's a very tough situation here. I think for Martin, it's not that big of an impact. For Joey, it is. I mean, it is a distraction. So I think as Joe Gibbs had addressed that, so Joey, you're fine, don't worry about it, go do your job. That's what he needed to hear. And as long as the team and everybody is all on the same page, they can move forward as long as the story dies.
But even though he heard it, and he heard it from Joe, he's human. He's human nature, and he's a rookie. Is there going to be that little thing in the back of his mind that it sticks there?
Without question. Unfortunately, when the media gets a hold of something like this, or even creates the swell like this, you can't walk away from it as an athlete or as a performer. It only will mount, and until he starts having success, continued success, that is, he's going to struggle, and this will just mount each week as we go race to race to race. And every time he makes a mistake, this will be the question. Is he capable? Is Joe Gibbs thinking about getting rid of him? This is a terrible situation to be in, and until they win races, they do not change it.
That is an excerpt from last Monday's NASCAR Now Roundtable show with Ray Evernham, Johnny Benson, and Brad Daugherty addressing how drivers, teams, owners, and so on, in this case, Joey Logano, Martin Truex, and Joe Gibbs, have to deal with the aftermath of rumors that are reported in the media. With 3 reporters on our panel today, I wanted to turn around and hear the other side of that story and talk about the decisions that get made of when and how to report different things. First of all, how much competition is there in the press room to break stories and be first on stories?
Well, of course there's competition. I mean, I want SceneDaily.com to have the story first. Marty wants ESPN.com to have the story first, so on and so forth. But I think, you know, watching those comments that we just saw there, I kind of bristle at that a little bit because Ray Evernham, the rumors that he was going to sell the team, those didn't turn out to be true. Those were true. Johnny Benson switching teams, those were true. I mean, yes, there are some rumors that are started, and there's some stuff that's wrongly reported. I think the media as a whole in NASCAR does a pretty good job of reporting what turns out to be very accurate stories a lot of the time. I mean, that's just me.
Let's talk about reporting rumor, which was the subject that set off that discussion of last Monday. What are your guides and boundaries about reporting rumor?
Well, you know, Alan, it's always been the quest to be first. There's always been the quest to be first with a story. But these days, it's different. Now, reporting now means now in this. TV's out there, radio's out there, everybody's out there, and you're not waiting for the next day's edition anymore. You're going now, and that leads to less than thorough fact checking. It leads to less than thorough reporting.
Yeah, the internet changed everything.
It did.
I mean, the internet completely changed the industry. I think the biggest key is fair and accurate. I mean, the fundamentals of journalism, honestly, checking up on it, going to ask the person involved or someone associated with the person or persons involved whether or not there's any accuracy to it, because especially in our sport, I think in our sport more than any other, the levels of ramifications are so deep. You got to answer to sponsors. You know, there's so many employees that are affected by rumor and innuendo. So, I mean, it's a big responsibility. Being right is the bottom line. I think being right is much bigger than being first.
And I just only have time for a yes or no on this. Is there a difference in standard between what you'll put in a paper or on TV and what you'd put on a website?
Absolutely not. Same standards.
There should be the same standards.
But you're saying they're not always?
No, not always.
There should be no difference, not at all. There should be no difference.
The reporter side of the discussion of reporting rumors and the rest of that, following up on our roundtable of the previous Monday. Up next, tomorrow's headlines today. Our panel's predicting some things you might read later in the season. That is opinion on the NASCAR Now Monday roundtable coming right up. Last season, qualifying for NASCAR Sprint Cup Series race was rained out 10 times, a record for one season, and it's been canceled by weather once already in 2009, Martinsville a couple of weeks ago. The field for all of those races lined up according to provisions in the NASCAR rulebook, which is basically by owners' points. Which leads us to something I'll call change or not change. A couple of topics in the sport and ask our panel whether if they were in charge, would they change it or not change it. First thing, the way the field is set when qualifying rains out. Change or not change?
Yeah, I have to say change it. Let's move it to Saturdays. Why not, if we have the time?
Change or not change?
Not change. I think it's fine the way it is. I think Johnson was rewarded last year for driving well.
No, it's fine the way it is. 2008 was an anomaly.
All right, so not change on the way the qualifying is by 2 out of 3 anyway. Next topic, top 35 rule, guaranteeing basically the top 35 in owners' points, a starting spot in the next race. Change or not change?
Yeah, I'm going to double change this one. I think, everybody should try to qualify for their qualifying spot, just like they do in the NHRA. If you miss a race, you go home. That just sucks.
Change or not change?
I'm going to say no change on this. I think the companies are paying a lot of money to get in there. People want to see the stars in there. No change.
I say change. I like Jeff Burton's idea. It's virtually a franchising situation, 43 teams only. That gives the sponsor more value. They know they're in the race, and it gives the owners something to sell. If they want to get out, they can make money back on their investment instead of 20 cents on the dollar, which the Bill Davises of the world are getting that.
A little franchise system. Next topic, the car of tomorrow, or the new car as we should call it now. Change or not change?
I'm going to triple change this one. Is it an option? I mean, we were promised better racing with the new car, NASCAR, and if there's one thing that needs it changing in the sport right now, it's the new car. The racing has not been that good. It's very tough to pass. Please let the teams change the new car, please.
I love the COT. I love it. I think the racing is better. I think, you know, we haven't heard the word aero push in a long time.
It's all about, I mean, the COT's fine. I don't think you should change it one bit. As Jim said, what was the biggest complaint by drivers before we came to this car in the first place? Aero push. We heard every weekend, we can't pass, we can't drive them. Just drive it.
Change costs money, by the way, in this time. The season schedule, the number of races, where the races are, change or not change?
Well, maybe you guys will agree with me on this one. I'd like to see some more short track, somehow, some way. Can I get some agreement on this?
Change.
Yes.
I'll agree with you on that, and I'd like to see more road racing.
I say 29 races total. Seriously, every track gets one race, that's 22. A second one at Daytona, Talladega, Charlotte, Vegas, Texas, and Bristol, and add Kentucky. 29 races.
Wow, he says change. Everybody says change. Purse structure. Bruton Smith was talking about this. I can't remember if it was at Vegas or Bristol, but he was basically talking about that if there were more of a gap, if the purse were more top-heavy, more of a gap between winning and finishing second, there'd be a lot more to race for in the final laps than just points. The purse structure, change or not change?
I say don't change for this one. This is the one thing I'm not changing because it's not going to make them drive any harder. It's really not.
I'm going to say no change because I don't understand to begin with. I mean, one of the first calls you take from people a day after races, how come somebody finished 10th is making more money than that? You know how it goes.
Yeah, it's fine. Leave it alone. They make a ton of money anyway.
There you go. All right, now we move on to something now I'm going to call tomorrow's headlines today. This is pure opinion, in fact might just be wild guesses, on some things you might see as headlines later on in this NASCAR Sprint Cup Series season. Marty, you're first. What headline might we see?
Y'all might think I'm crazy, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see Casey Kane leave Richard Petty Motorsports.
Really?
Yep, for greener pastures. They got to start fielding better cars for this kid. He's immensely talented, and right now, you know, he and Kenny Francis are great together, but I would not be surprised if we see it.
Where's he going to go?
That's a good question. Probably wherever he wants.
That'd be some other headline we'll see later on in the season. What are we going to see?
I think we're going to see Dale Earnhardt Jr. miss the chase, unfortunately, the way he's running right now. And then we're going to see a crew chief change, which is not that far-fetched. With 5 races to go, Hendrick's going to finally make the move to prepare for next season. I know it's been talked about a lot, but I just don't see right now the way Dale Earnhardt Jr. is running that this combination with him and cousin Tony Eury Jr. is good enough to get in the chase and win a championship.
What are we going to see?
I think the momentum is going to continue to build for moving the last race of the season to Las Vegas. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the track at Homestead these days. It's racy, it puts on good shows, but there's no buzz down there. You guys have been down there, and you go down there, and it's just another event down there.
I love going there, and I personally hope they don't do that because that's one of my favorite trips of the year, but we'll see. Just some guesses on our part of some things you might see later on in the season while we have some fun during the off week. Up next on the Monday Roundtable edition of NASCAR Now, the winner of this weekend's Nationwide Series race in Nashville, Joey Logano, joins us. Hear what he has to say next. The NASCAR Nationwide Series races next Friday night at Phoenix International Raceway, 9 Eastern time on ESPN2. Let's see, Kyle Busch, Carl Edwards, they won the races there last year. Figure those two guys will be factors. That is Friday night, 9 Eastern on ESPN2.
Coming through turn 4 for the final time. The youngster is going to pick up his first win of the 2009 campaign here at Nashville. Play the guitar. Get you some of that. Yeah.
Been kind of an interesting logistical day for us and our next guest. He's been testing up at the Virginia International Raceway Road Course in Danville, Virginia. Rain in and out of there. Was he going to be there all day? Was he not? Wound up, they finished a little early, and he stuck around to talk to us on NASCAR Now. We welcome the winner of Saturday's Nationwide Series race in Nashville, Joey Logano. I hear for your spring break from the Cup Series, you took a weekend trip to Nashville and had a little bit of fun?
Oh yeah, had a good weekend off on the Cup side and went to Nashville, which is a place that I love, and we got to test a lot and you know, had fun. You know, finally got that win. I think the whole GameStop Toyota team really needed that. Dave Rogers and the guys. It's been a while since we had that car in victory lane, so that was really fun.
Hey, take me through the end of that race. It was pretty much Carl Edwards, Kyle Busch, and yourself for the first half. Then you and Kyle Busch there down to the finish. Take us through that race.
It was cool. We swapped back and forth. I don't know how many times, but it was a lot. Carl was leading a lot, and I was good on the short runs, and back and forth, Kyle was good on the long runs. So we passed each other so many times, and I got the short runs at the end, which I needed, and was able to get by Kyle and you know, get a good enough lead to kind of get away. When he was tucked up behind me, I was too loose. He'd get by me, and then when he was behind me, he got too tight for aero stuff. So you know, just got a big enough lead that he wasn't right on my bumper, and was able to pull away a little bit.
Joey, hey, it's Jeff Gluck from NASCAR Scene here. Just wondering, with the season you've had on the Cup side and kind of some of the struggles, have you gotten a lot of support internally from your team guys, from J.D. Gibbs, people like that tell you, hey, you know, it's just growing pains, you know, we know you're going through it. Has there been a lot of that going on?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, yeah, think about it. It's the Sprint Cup Series, the best of the best. And even looking at the nationwide side, okay, my 2 wins came from Kentucky and Nashville, the 2 places that we tested the most when we were able to test with the Cup cars. So, you know, those laps apparently mean something. You know, those are the 2 places that got my 2 poles and my 2 wins, and it's places I run the best. Now, you go to the Cup side, all the rookies don't get that experience, don't get those laps at those racetracks, which makes it tougher. And I mean, it goes to show this weekend even.
Joey, you obviously have the nationwide cars nailed pretty good. How different are they to drive than the new COTs?
They're one end to the other. Believe me, the nationwide car has got a lot of downforce and no motor, which makes it feel like a go-kart, really. And the Cup cars are completely opposite. A lot of horsepower, no downforce. So they're so different, and the way you got to drive them is a lot different. The Cup cars, you got to have them yawed out there a lot more to get that side force, to get the car go through the corner faster. And it's a totally different feel. And you know, like I said, you go to these different racetracks you've never been to, and you got to figure out that. And as a rookie, any rookie, it just makes it hard. And by the time you figure it out, you're too late. So it's just kind of a rookie deal, I guess.
Joey, Marty Smith here. I spoke with Joe Gibbs, pardon me, at Texas, and he said this entire organization and depot fully back you. Despite the fact that you've had the bad luck and whatnot, there are the whispers out there. So how badly did you personally need this win on Saturday at Nashville just to kind of recalibrate yourself and say, okay, I can still do this?
It's huge. You know, I mean, you know, a lot of people were, you know, all of a sudden talking bad and, you know, all those rumors, all that stuff. And now all of a sudden I win a race and everyone wants to talk to me again. All of a sudden I'm good again. So it's kind of funny how that works. And, you know, I mean, yeah, for me, it's a huge confidence booster for sure. You know, I mean, to get that win, you know, that whole team, like I said, needed it, and I needed it really bad. So that's good confidence to bring into Phoenix. That's one of the racetracks I really like a lot. So try to get 2 in a row.
Joey, just a quick thought on Phoenix before we let you go. Each time you go back to that racetrack, what changes for you?
It's a place I love. You know, it's I don't know what it is. You know, it's flat. It's a 1 mile track. It's something I like. It doesn't have a bunch of grip. Kind of wears out your tires a little bit. Obviously, both ends are way different. And we ran good in our nationwide car there last year. And we got to do the tire test there actually with the Cup car. So looking forward to getting the Home Depot Toyota out there. And we got the sport clips on the nationwide side for the first race with them. So that's going to be real cool.
Thanks for hanging around and waiting for us. We appreciate it. And congratulations on the win in Nashville.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Joey Logano, winner of Saturday's NASCAR Nationwide Series race at the Nashville Superspeedway up at Virginia International Raceway, where he was testing the Home Depot car on this Monday. You know, Marty, in response to your question, Joey was talking about how big that win was for him, and he didn't hold back either. It was big.
Absolutely, it was huge. And I think the biggest variable there, the biggest reason that it was so huge is the exact same equipment that Kyle Busch was driving. They shared all the information, all the changes they were doing. Dave Rogers and Jason Ratcliffe back and forth between those teams. So he beat Kyle Busch mano a mano. Huge win for him.
I mean, confidence is just so big in this sport. You know, if things aren't going well and you kind of get in a funk and you get in a slump, confidence, you know, it erodes and it affects your performance. There's no doubt it does. So even though it's 2 separate series, Sprint Cup and Nationwide, this will translate, not mechanically, but confidence-wise and mentally. And that's really big for an 18-year-old guy.
Yeah, it's especially important with all the hype that came into the sport with him. I mean, God, he's carrying a lot on his shoulders, and everybody was expecting the world from him right away. He's a teenager.
And handling it well, by the way.
Absolutely.
The questions, the pressure, so on, handling it very well. And so we expect bright things for Joey Logano's future. Certainly a huge win for him in Nashville on Saturday. All right, coming up on the Monday Roundtable edition of NASCAR Now, what are the most memorable races our panelists have covered and the most memorable people they've covered in the sport? We'll dive into that next. Now on ESPN.com, David Newton writes that Juan Pablo Montoya hasn't been the patient type in the past, but this year seems to be catching on to the benefits of that virtue. Check it out at ESPN.com. If you are a fan of NASCAR racing, you have some races, maybe even just one, that stands out more than any other you've seen over the course of your time as a fan. Well, as reporters covering the sport, we have those too. So I wanted to ask our Reporters Roundtable for their most special moment, the race that stands out the most among others that they've covered in their time in the sport. Marty, what were you thinking?
I think it's the 2001 spring race at Atlanta when Kevin Harvick won in the 3-car, down there at Atlanta, replacing Dale Earnhardt. That was just an amazing day. I have never been seen before or since an entire media conglomerate standing up, cheering like crazy for a kid to get a win. And it was extremely surreal. And that organization needed it so terribly at that time. It was just a landmark win. And it was really cool to be there and cover it.
Yeah. Jim?
I got a short memory span, so I'm going to say last year's Kansas race to me was really special, especially the ending. I mean, it's what every race fan wants. I mean, it's like a bonsai move on the final turn of the final lap. Carl keeps going, still crosses the line. It was beautiful. That's why you watch racing.
That was outstanding. Jeff, what do you think?
Well, this isn't necessarily the best race I've ever seen, but definitely the most memorable. 22 cautions. A last-second winner, the 2005 Coca-Cola 600 with Jimmy Johnson. He wins his 3rd straight, and there was all sorts of crazy stuff going on. Dale Jr. wrecked his teammate Michael Waltrip on the front stretch. The track had levigated before, and it just caused you guys remember that, it just caused all sorts of craziness. It was just a wild race, wild night. It seemed to last forever, but it was such a cool race. I mean, I just remember going home and being like, wow, man, what just happened?
That was a humpy turn.
I remember going home and thinking, man, I got to go to bed.
Yeah, I've got a headache.
Yeah. Ridiculous how long that race was.
Yeah.
All right, little different twist. The most memorable person you've covered in the sport. You start.
Mine's interesting. It's a young man named Matt Dahl. He was a 15-year-old kid. I got an email from a fan, and this young man, this fan was on a flight with a gentleman named Jason Dahl, who happened to be a United Airlines pilot. Well, several days later, he was flying Flight 93 that crashed in a field in Pennsylvania on 9/11. Well, that young man, the young kid, told his father that his dream was to meet Jeff Gordon. Well, his father told that seatmate on the plane, and after the plane went down, that gentleman found the family and emailed me, and we happened to make it happen that young man, Matt Dahl, could meet Jeff Gordon at the Kansas race in 2001. And it was just an awesome experience for me and was a great human race story.
That's cool.
I got to go with Dale Earnhardt Sr. He was just he wasn't always a pleasant interview. I mean, you didn't always come away feeling really good about things. But boy, I mean, when you interviewed him, you knew you were talking to somebody special. It just wasn't some guy laying around the track. This was Dale Earnhardt Sr., and everything they say was true. He was bigger than life.
I think everybody that had the opportunity to cover Dale Sr. has a senior story somewhere in there that just files away in your memory and you think back on fondly.
Man, I feel bad now. We have 9/11 and we have Dale Sr. I picked Bruton Smith. I don't know why.
No, that's good.
But Bruton Smith, honestly, I mean, you guys have been in some of his press conferences. This guy, he's an innovator and he's also a showman. And I've saved all the recordings of his press conferences, like you see here. I mean, it's just so entertaining. The guy just, there's something about him that's magnetic, and you know that he's trying to do things to make the sport better and more exciting and entertaining for the fans. And I think that makes him memorable to me.
When you're a reporter, you want to treat everyone the same, but let's face it, some people are more fun to cover than others. Who's your favorite person to cover?
Junior. He just, I mean, you know, he's just so funny. You know, he sits there and thinks about your questions, and he does his best to answer them, but he'll talk in a circle 5 times before he gets there. And the thing about him, though, is he can be, when he's on, he is absolute solid gold when it comes to quotes, because he says some amazing things. And when he talks, people listen. People change tracks for this guy.
Yeah. Who's your favorite person to cover?
I love talking to Jeff Burton. You don't really talk to him, you listen to him. You don't really interview him, you listen to him. It's one good thing after another. Sometimes I always bring a recording device along just because I'm listening and I don't want to miss anything.
Yeah, Jeff is a very eloquent spokesman for the sport these days. The mayor?
He's the mayor.
They call him the mayor,
He's the mayor.
Mine's relatively new, but I'm going to go with Scott Speed. I think all you have to do is put a tape recorder, just stick it out there and listen to it. He just fills it up. I mean, the guy is crazy. He's wild. I mean, if he did anything to get in chase contention or just to put some top 5 runs together, it would be really good for the sport because he's so entertaining and so new and unique. I just think that's kind of what the sport needs, some fresh blood like that, and it's really exciting to listen to him.
Yeah. Now we go out on the edge a little bit because as reporters, there are some people that are more difficult to cover than others, and it can be an individual thing, but who's the most difficult person for you to interview and why?
No question whatsoever. Kurt Busch on a bad day. Yeah, I could just skip that. He's tough on a bad day, man. You know, when he's running well and he wins, he's awesome. Extremely engaging, very thoughtful answers. But on a bad day, I'll just stay away from him.
Yeah.
I'm going to preface mine too. Ryan Newman's tough for me, not because he's a bad guy or not because he gives you a hard time or anything like that. He just, when he wants to talk, he's wonderful, he's intelligent, he's a college guy. But boy, squeezing it out of him, it's a full-time job.
Yeah, when he doesn't want to talk.
When he doesn't want to talk, it's tough squeezing it out of him.
Yeah, mine's Kevin Harvick. I think you guys know he can probably be pretty prickly. He's not going to necessarily go along with the questions that you want to go along with for your story if you're working on something. He can be very abrasive, and even on his good days, he can be a bit of a challenge sometimes, so I'm going to go with him.
It's an interesting thing. I've said this for many years now, but when these guys come up learning how to race, they learn how to race. But nobody teaches you how to be a celebrity until you get to the big time, and all of a sudden it's there. And some guys have more trouble adjusting to being a celebrity than others.
Especially when you win quickly.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like Harvick is a great example because, I mean, he went from a sort of obscure Busch Series driver, Nationwide Series driver, to
yeah. And you throw Kyle in there too in the same circumstances.
Yeah.
On a bad day, Kyle, whew, watch out. Right?
It's a tough thing. And by the way, nobody mentioned Tony Stewart.
Yeah.
Just pointing that out.
Good.
Up next on the NASCAR Now Monday Roundtable, we preview this weekend's action at Phoenix, what to watch for when the lights come on at the Desert Mile. The NASCAR and motorsports, for that matter, calendar on the ESPN networks this week, featuring the NASCAR Nationwide Series. Friday night from Phoenix, 9 Eastern, ESPN2, and then the NHRA Southern Nationals, qualifying and finals, Saturday and Sunday, also on ESPN2.
All you have to do if you do come to pit road is just be there for a second. Mark Martin may pit in one lap. That will hand the lead. You see it there to Jimmy Johnson in that 48 car. He has over a 10-second lead. He can really slow this race car down now.
Slow it down now, bud. Slow it down. Slow it down. Slow it way down.
What a great gamble.
Slow it down, buddy.
What a great call. High stakes.
First win for Hendrick in 2008. Jimmy Johnson coasts across on fumes.
There's more than one way to win a race, isn't it? And if you want to look for a favorite at Phoenix, you might want to start with Hendrick Motorsports this weekend. The 3 drivers with the best Phoenix average all race with Hendrick. And by the way, the driver with the 4th best Phoenix average basically is driving a Hendrick-powered and Hendrick chassis car. So maybe those guys you might want to have on your fantasy team for this weekend's race. So it is 312 miles Saturday night, starting in the twilight, finishing under the lights at Phoenix International Raceway. As the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series gets back to action, we get opinions on who and what to watch for now from our Reporters Roundtable panel. Can't start a Phoenix discussion lately without talking about Jimmy Johnson. 3 straight at that racetrack. Is the law of averages going to catch up, or is Jimmy a factor again?
I don't even know if the law of averages apply to this guy. Honestly, I don't. And that particular win last year was so critical for them because they were out to lunch. I mean, they couldn't get out of their own way early in the season, and then they come and they get that momentum builder. We've been talking about confidence and momentum the entire show, and that was huge for the 48 guys to get that win at Phoenix.
I mean, the law of averages, you could say the same thing about his whole championship season 3 in a row. But, I mean, honestly, that was a fuel mileage win, and I almost want to discount fuel mileage wins naturally. And I know that's not necessarily fair, but that, you know, I don't look at that the same way as I look at another win. So, yeah, I think somebody else will probably win this week.
Well, where Jimmy's good, he's good. I mean, he's just so consistent in some of these places. And it's him, and it's Chad knowing that place. He's just good at places he's good at, and this is one of them.
Was there another kind of flat racetrack a couple weeks ago they looked awfully good at?
Yeah, they were pretty dominant down there at the paperclip.
Yeah,
that must be one of the
yeah.
hardest things to do, too, is throttle back like that.
Yeah.
When they're saying, save it, save it, save it, save it, when
Yeah.
they're just set on kill all the time.
And by the way, I don't discount fuel mileage wins. Whatever it takes, he got the trophy and he got the checkered flag. Let's talk about some other people to watch for on the weekend. Marty, you mentioned Dale Jr.
I really believe this is going to be a good weekend for Dale Earnhardt Jr. This is one of his best tracks, 2 career wins here. Tony Eury Jr. is crew chief. Excellent, excellent at setting up cars on flat tracks like Phoenix. I just think that this could be a special weekend for Dale where they could gain a little momentum.
You know, it's funny, we were talking about Joey Logano and how big a win would be for him. Imagine what it'd be like for Junior if he wins this weekend. What a big thing that would be for him and that team.
They need it. I mean, if you look at how well, despite the fact that Mark Martin's been down in points and they've had terrible luck.
Yeah.
The 88 just hasn't run as well as the other 3.
But Marty, I mean, every week we could say, oh, you know, this could be Junior's week. Oh, he's really good here. He's really great. This could be his time. And
there's only 2 tracks on the tour where he's better than Phoenix.
Talladega?
And Daytona.
Okay. Yeah. But we've gone through those. I mean, I just keep waiting for him every week, and I keep getting let down, so I'm tired of picking him. That's my...
Well, you don't have to. I will.
There you go.
Then who else do you like?
I like Kevin Harvick this week. He has a long winless streak now, so I'm not going to go out and say, you know, he's a lock. He hasn't won since the Daytona 500 2 years ago. But he's really good at Phoenix. He's second in the pre-race driver rating there, which I believe in because I use my fantasy picks for that. So that's something if you're out there looking to pick your fantasy stuff, go for that. But he's good there. He hasn't won in 78 races. It's about time for him.
I don't understand this driver rating thing. It's like a quarterback rating in football. I don't know what it means.
Don't question it. Just use it. That's what I say.
All right. Who are you looking at, Jim?
Tony Stewart. This is the week Tony Stewart breaks through as an owner driver. It's just his kind of track, you know. It's got dirt on the track, and it's dusty. It's got the kink on the back stretch, and it's just a driver's kind of track, and drivers don't get much better than Tony Stewart.
Yeah.
And he's so good there. He has so much experience. He raced sprint cars there and whatnot. He absolutely loves the place. So I wouldn't disagree with that.
I think he's got 8 top 10s there, which is...
And they certainly have been running well enough lately. That whole putting yourself in position to win thing, that has been happening. All right, some ideas on who to watch for at Phoenix this coming Saturday night. Up next on the NASCAR Now Monday Roundtable, news and notes and some final thoughts from our reporter guests. That when we come back in just a minute. Coming up in just a couple minutes over on ESPN News, we're going to talk more about this weekend's Phoenix race for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series and what the big Nashville Nationwide Series victory meant for Joey Logano. That's on ESPN News coming up a few minutes after we're done here. And in our news and notes, I just don't like that term, lug notes. I don't know. I just haven't bought into it yet. SceneDaily.com reports lawsuits over who is responsible for the Hendrick Motorsports plane crash 2004 could go to trial in U.S. District Court as early as next Monday. 5 people injured when a viewing platform collapsed at Columbus Motor Speedway in Ohio Saturday night. They ended up canceling the racing there while they try to figure out what happened. And Morgan McClure, the very famed NASCAR team that has been dormant for this season, will make its Sprint Cup Series return at Talladega April 26th. It is Eric McClure who is going to pilot the famous number 4 car there. When we have our reporters roundtable shows, one of the things we like to do is kind of borrow the idea from ESPN Sports Reporters Show to give each a final thought, a topic that's maybe close to them they'd like to speak on. So we're going to do that right now. Jeff, you first.
Thanks. It was destined to be one of the great racing numbers of all time, but when we get to Phoenix this week, the number 8 won't even be on the track, and that's wrong. The number Dale Earnhardt Jr. made famous is gone for now, vanished into a cloud of sponsorship troubles. Teresa Earnhardt once thought the number 8 was so valuable, she refused to let her stepson take it with him to Hendrick Motorsports. Now it's in limbo, waiting for the next part-time sponsor to come along for driver Eric Almirola. It might just be a number, but it deserved better. Jim?
Thanks, Jeff. When it comes to the economics of racing in NASCAR, the toothpaste is out of the tube. Just as the search for speed has always been the goal on the shop floors, the desire to keep the cost of that speed has been low in the bookkeeping departments. In that respect, the guys with the wrenches have fared a lot better than the guys with the pencils. Spending in the top series in NASCAR has reached a level that would even make Holman quite moody. Attempts to turn back the clock in spending are as doomed to failure as they are necessary. They have found that to be true everywhere from Mugello to Mooresville. There is no crest when it comes to spending money in racing. Marty?
Absolutely, Jim. Well said. Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s unrivaled popularity is both blessing and curse. His fans expect too much. The media does too. Fact is, to appease them all, he'll have to hoist the cup. So when he struggles, a chorus of critics sings to the heavens, making his life a living hell. Or not. Earnhardt told me last week that criticism actually brings him hope. It means they expect us to excel, he said. I guess he listened well to the old man who used to say, boos or cheers, doesn't matter, so long as they're saying something. Alan?
All right, Marty, thanks. I talked earlier in the show about how Homestead, Miami was one of my favorite trips of the year. Well, this weekend is as well. Phoenix, what a great town for the NASCAR Sprint Cup circuit to visit. The weather's always great, lots of great restaurants, fun things to do in town, and the Speedway itself does a great job with the facility, getting the traffic in and out. And by the way, the racing, it's just the right length. Not too long, not too short. Can't wait to get to Phoenix and soak up a little of that Valley of the Sun atmosphere this weekend. So that wraps up our Reporters Roundtable edition of the NASCAR Now Monday Roundtable. Want to thank Jeff Gluck, the Associate Editor of NASCAR Scene, Jim Pedley, the Managing Editor of RacingToday.com, and Marty Smith, our NASCAR Now lead reporter. Couldn't let that go. Come on. And coming up on Tuesday's show, Nicole Mansky hosts. Jeff Burton joins her, and upside-down Joe Nemechek. It doesn't sound as good as Front Row Joe, but it is what happened in Nashville this past weekend. And I hear there's a Said head sighting, too. Boris Said on the show Tuesday as well.
That ought to be good.
Always
a good time with Boris.
Guys, thank you. Enjoyed it. Appreciate it very much. Thank you for watching. Tomorrow night, 5 Eastern Time, and then it's off to Phoenix. See ya.